I'm Julia, 30F, and I have been living with my girlfriend Sarah, 26F, in a small one-bedroom flat in London for the past 2 years. We moved here from different countries. I'm from Canada and she's from Australia. The flat is pretty cramped even for just the two of us, with a glass partition wall separating the bedroom area from the living space. I work in investment banking while Sarah works as a teacher at a local primary school. Some background about us: I moved to London 5 years ago for my career after getting an amazing opportunity at a prestigious bank. The job is intense but rewarding, and I've worked my way up to a senior position. I met Sarah at a mutual friend's birthday party 3 years ago, shortly after she moved to London to pursue her teaching career. She was this bright, bubbly person who completely contrasted with my more reserved personality, but somehow we just clicked. Things moved pretty quickly between us. We moved in together after dating for a year, initially into a spacious 2-bedroom flat. About 8 months ago, we had to downsize to our current place due to the landlord selling our previous flat. The London housing market was brutal, and this was the best we could find in our preferred area that would keep Sarah close to her school. I make significantly more money than Sarah, of 4 times her salary, so I cover the full rent while she handles groceries and utilities. This arrangement made sense to us as it allows Sarah to save some money while still contributing to our household. She's always been a bit sensitive about the income difference, though she tries not to show it. Sarah has a very close relationship with her family, especially her younger sister Emma, 24F. They video call almost daily, and Sarah often talks about feeling homesick. I've only met Emma once when she visited last year for 2 weeks when we had the bigger flat. That visit went fine since we had the space and I was working fewer hours back then. The current situation started when Sarah went to visit Emma in Australia for 2 weeks. Emma recently got a promotion at her marketing job that doubled her salary, and she decided to celebrate by planning a big European adventure. The plan, as Sarah casually mentioned to me one day, was for Emma to do some solo traveling around Europe for 3 weeks before coming to stay with us in London. Here's where things get complicated. Sarah never actually asked if I was okay with this arrangement. She just started talking about it like it was already decided, making plans and discussing what they would do together in London. She didn't mention any specific dates or duration of stay, just vague plans about showing Emma around and having sister time. I started getting really stressed about the whole situation. My job is incredibly demanding. I work 14-hour shifts at least once a week and have 2 sets of night shifts where I need to sleep during the day. These shifts are non-negotiable and crucial for my role in managing Asian market trading. I'm also quite introverted and really value my personal space. After those long shifts, I need quiet time to decompress. The logistics of having Emma stay with us are also problematic. The glass partition in our flat means there's zero privacy. I'd have to go to the bathroom just to change clothes. Our sofa is a small 2-seater that isn't even long enough for someone to sleep on properly. The living area is basically part of our bedroom because of the open plan design. I spent several days trying to figure out how to approach this with Sarah. I didn't want to come across as unsupportive or uncaring about her relationship with Emma. When Sarah would video call with Emma, they talk excitedly about all their plans, and I felt like the bad guy for even thinking about objecting. Finally, I built up the courage to talk to Sarah about my concerns. I waited until we were both relaxed one evening and carefully explained that while I absolutely want her to spend time with Emma, having someone stay in our tiny flat for an undefined period would be really difficult given my work schedule and need for space. I suggested maybe Emma could shorten her solo travel time and use that money to get her own accommodation in London instead, or we could look into affordable Airbnb options nearby. Sarah initially seemed to understand, though she was visibly disappointed. She said she talked to Emma about other options. I thought we had reached a reasonable compromise. Today, just before boarding her flight back to London, Sarah messages me saying she's crying. Naturally concerned, I asked if she was sad about leaving family. Instead of responding directly, she sent me screenshots of her conversation with Emma. They were discussing how upset they are that they'll have to cut their time together short because I'm being difficult and stressed about my personal space. Emma had written about how she couldn't believe I was being like this and how she thought I was different from Sarah's ex who was also controlling about family. Sarah followed this up with a message saying she felt torn between her sister and me, then went offline as her flight took off. I feel incredibly manipulated by this situation. They just spent 2 entire weeks together, and Emma is choosing to spend 3 weeks traveling alone before coming here. If spending time together was so important, why not use some of that travel money for accommodation? Emma just got a significant pay raise, surely she can afford a hotel or Airbnb? Our flat literally doesn't have space. We had Emma's friend stay with us last year when we had the bigger 2-bedroom place, but this is completely different. The worst part is I still don't even know when Emma is planning to come or for how long. Sarah didn't even consider how this would affect me or my work schedule. When we had the bigger flat last year, I had no issues with visitors because we had the space. But this is different, we're literally living in what's essentially a studio apartment. I sent Sarah a long message explaining how I felt hurt that she made these plans without consulting me, especially given our living situation and my work schedule. I explained that this isn't about not wanting to spend time with Emma, it's about practical constraints and respect for each other's space and needs. I also pointed out how unfair it was to compare me to her ex or imply I was being controlling when I'm simply asking for basic consideration. Am I being unreasonable here? I feel like I'm being painted as the bad guy for having completely valid concerns about our living situation. Update 1: Things have gotten significantly worse since my last post. When Sarah returned from Australia, I picked her up from the airport hoping we could have a calm discussion about everything. Instead, she barely spoke to me during the entire ride home, keeping her eyes fixed on her phone while texting Emma. The next few days were incredibly tense. Sarah has been giving me the cold shoulder, spending most of her time in video calls with Emma or texting her, making plans for the visit without including me in any discussions. She's been taking calls in the bathroom or going for walks to talk to Emma, which made me feel like they were deliberately planning things behind my back. Yesterday, everything came to a head when I accidentally discovered the full extent of their plans. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I overheard Sarah on the phone call with Emma discussing flight dates. That's when I learned Sarah had already promised Emma she could stay with us for 6 weeks. She was talking about how Emma would arrive just before the school term ends so they could spend Sarah's entire summer break together. When I confronted Sarah about this after her call, she completely broke down. Through tears, she revealed that Emma had actually quit her job despite the recent promotion. Apparently, Emma decided she needed to find herself in Europe and planned to use her savings from the higher salary to fund this journey of self-discovery. Sarah defended this decision, saying Emma was under a lot of pressure at work and needed this break. The situation escalated dramatically when Sarah's parents got involved. I was in the middle of a work call when my phone started buzzing with calls from an Australian number. Sarah had given them my personal number without asking me first. When I finally answered, her mom Linda launched into a lengthy lecture about family values and how disappointed they were in my selfish behavior. Linda and Sarah's dad John spent nearly an hour telling me how in Australian culture, family always comes first and that I was being culturally insensitive. They brought up how they had welcomed Sarah's previous partners into their home and treated them like family. They even offered to pay for a larger Airbnb for all of us to stay in during Emma's visit, but insisted it had to be for the full 6 weeks because that's what family does and anything less would be insulting to Emma. When I tried explaining my position again to Sarah later that evening, she completely turned the tables on me. She accused me of trying to control her by using the rent as leverage since I pay for it. She brought up every single time I've had friends over for dinner in the past year, down to specific dates. She mentioned when my cousin stayed for a weekend last year in our old flat, saying I have double standards when it comes to my family versus hers. The conversation got even more absurd when Sarah started suggesting compromises. Her idea of a solution was that during my night shifts, I could sleep on the floor of our office at work so Emma could have the bed. When I pointed out how unreasonable this was, she said I was being rigid and uncompromising. She even suggested we could put up a curtain around the sofa to give Emma privacy, completely ignoring the fact that the sofa is barely big enough for one person to sit on, let alone sleep. Emma has been adding fuel to the fire by posting passive-aggressive stories on Instagram. She's been sharing quotes about toxic people who come between sisters and chosen family versus blood family, tagging Sarah in all of them. She even posted a throwback photo from when she visited last year, captioning it, "Remember when some people weren't so controlling about family time?" The situation has started affecting our social circle too. Several of Sarah's friends have unfollowed me on social media, and I've received multiple messages from their mutual friends telling me how I'm ruining their sister bond. One friend even sent a long paragraph about how she let her partner's entire family stay in their one-room apartment for 2 months and how it brought them closer together. Sarah and I barely talk anymore unless it's about Emma's visit, and every conversation turns into an argument. Last night, she suggested that maybe I should be the one to get an Airbnb during Emma's stay since I'm the only one with an issue about space. When I pointed out that this is my home too and I pay the rent, she accused me of being materialistic and prioritizing money over relationships. The whole situation feels like it's spiraling out of control. Sarah seems to have completely forgotten about all the practical issues, my work schedule, the tiny living space, the lack of privacy. Instead, she's turned this into a referendum on my character and my commitment to our relationship. She keeps saying things like, "If you really love me, you'd make this work, and I don't understand why you're trying to come between me and my sister." I'm starting to feel like I'm living in a parallel universe where having reasonable boundaries makes me the villain. Every time I try to have a rational discussion about practical solutions, it turns into an emotional argument about family loyalty and love. I've suggested multiple alternatives, helping them find an affordable Airbnb nearby, splitting Emma's stay between our place and other accommodations, even offering to pay for some activities they can do together. But nothing seems good enough unless I agree to the full 6-week stay in our tiny flat. Update 2: The situation has taken an unexpected and disturbing turn. Last week, I came home early from work because I had a migraine. Usually, I work until 9 p.m. on Thursdays, but I left at 4 p.m. hoping to get some rest. When I got to our flat, I found the door unlocked, which was strange because Sarah should have been at school teaching. I walked in to discover Emma was already in our flat. She had a spare key, which Sarah had given her without telling me. Not only was she there, but she had completely taken over the space. Our furniture had been rearranged, my reading chair was pushed into a corner to make space for her giant suitcase, and she had spread her belongings all over our living area. Emma was cooking in our kitchen like she owned the place, using my expensive cookware that Sarah knows I'm particular about. She seemed completely unfazed by my shock, casually telling me she had arrived in London early because she needed a break from her travels. She acted like this was perfectly normal, saying Sarah had told her it was fine to come early while I was at work. During the heated confrontation that followed, I called Sarah at school. She came home early, and that's when everything started unraveling. Through a series of revelations, I discovered that nothing about Emma's finding herself in Europe story was true. She hadn't quit her job for traveling, she had been fired for having an affair with her boss's husband. The truth came out because of pure coincidence. Amy, Emma's ex-coworker, follows me on Instagram because we met during Emma's last visit. She saw my stories about the ongoing drama and reached out to warn me about what really happened. According to Amy, Emma had been caught in a compromising position with her boss's husband at a company event. The scandal was huge, and she was immediately fired. But this wasn't even the first time. Amy revealed that Emma had a history of similar behavior at her previous job, where she had been asked to leave after getting involved with a married colleague. The whole European adventure was actually just an escape plan to avoid the fallout from her latest scandal. She was hoping to lay low in London until things blew over in Australia. When confronted with this information, Sarah finally broke down and admitted she had known the truth all along. She had been covering for Emma because that's what sisters do. She tried to justify keeping it from me by saying she knew I wouldn't understand and would judge Emma for her mistakes. The most frustrating part was that she still insisted Emma should stay with us, saying everyone deserves a second chance and that I was being cruel for wanting to abandon Emma when she needed support. During this confrontation, more truths came out. Sarah admitted that Emma had already been living in our flat for 3 days while I was at work, sneaking out before I got home. They had been coordinating through text to make sure Emma was never there when I was. My suspicions about them whispering and planning behind my back hadn't been paranoid after all, they really were conspiring to move Emma in without my knowledge. Emma tried to defend herself, saying she never meant to cause problems between Sarah and me. She claimed she was going through a difficult time and just needed her sister's support. But when I pressed her about why she couldn't use her savings to get her own place, she admitted she had spent most of her money on designer clothes and first-class flights before leaving Australia. The argument got even more heated when Sarah revealed she had already helped Emma apply for teaching assistant positions at her school, planning for Emma to settle in London permanently. They had this entire future planned out without any consideration for me or my feelings. When I pointed out how manipulative and deceitful this was, Sarah accused me of being heartless and said I could never understand their bond because I'm an only child. Emma's presence in our flat has made things unbearable. She takes hour-long showers in our only bathroom, uses my things without asking, and has been sleeping in our bed while I'm at work. Sarah admitted this too. She even had the audacity to complain about my early morning routine disturbing her sleep. The final straw was finding out that Emma had been going through my personal papers when I was at work, looking for information about my salary and savings. Sarah defended this too, saying Emma was just trying to understand our financial situation better so she could plan how much to contribute once she found a job. I'm at my wit's end. My home doesn't feel like my home anymore. I can't work effectively because I'm not getting proper rest. My relationship feels like it's been built on lies. Sarah still can't understand why I feel betrayed, and Emma acts like she's the victim in all this. Update 3: After weeks of feeling like a stranger in my own home, I finally made the difficult decision to end my relationship with Sarah. The trust between us was completely shattered, not just by the lies about Emma but by the continuous betrayal of my boundaries and the complete disregard for my comfort and privacy. I gave Sarah formal notice to move out by the end of the month since her name wasn't on the lease. Initially, she tried to argue that she had tenant rights despite not paying rent, even threatening to get legal advice. In the end, both she and Emma moved in with some friends from Sarah's school while they looked for their own place. During the moving process, I discovered even more disturbing things. Sarah had been secretly recording our arguments on her phone, editing the clips to make me look aggressive, and sending them to her family and friends. She had carefully cut out her own provocative comments and just kept the parts where I was visibly frustrated. Her parents had been using these clips to build a case against me, claiming I was emotionally abusive. I also found out she had been regularly going through my work emails when I left my laptop open at home. She was trying to prove I was exaggerating about my work schedule and night shifts. She had even taken screenshots of confidential work information and sent them to Emma, who was apparently using them to try to get interviews at some of our client companies. The most hurtful discovery was Sarah's diary, which she accidentally left behind. I know I shouldn't have read it, but after everything that happened, I needed answers. The entries revealed that she and Emma had been planning this move-in situation for months, long before Emma's scandal at work. They had always intended for Emma to come live with us permanently, using the European travel story as a way to get their foot in the door. The diary also showed that Sarah had been deliberately downplaying our relationship to her family, telling them it was just temporary until she found someone more family-oriented. She had written about how Emma's presence would help her gradually distance herself from me without having to deal with the guilt of breaking up directly. Since the breakup, Sarah and Emma have been spreading their version of events throughout our social circle. They are telling everyone that I threw them out on the street, that I was financially controlling, and that I tried to come between sisters who just wanted to support each other. Some of our mutual friends who knew the whole story stood by me, but others chose to believe their narrative. I found out through a mutual friend that Sarah and Emma moved to a different part of London and are now sharing a flat. They've apparently been telling people that they're healing together from their experience with me, painting me as this controlling monster who tried to destroy their sister bond. Emma even started a blog about surviving toxic relationships where she heavily implies that I was emotionally abusive, though she never names me directly. The whole experience has made me reevaluate a lot of things about relationships and trust. I'm still living in the same flat, but I've rearranged everything to remove reminders of Sarah. I've blocked both sisters and their family members on all social media platforms after Sarah's mom started posting vague status updates about narcissistic people who destroy families. Some days are harder than others, especially when I hear through mutual friends about the stories they're spreading. But I know I made the right decision in standing my ground. I've learned that sometimes the people who accuse you of being toxic are the ones poisoning your life, and that standing up for yourself doesn't make you the villain, even if others try to paint you as one. Looking back, I realize that all the red flags were there from the beginning: the lack of respect for boundaries, the secret planning, the emotional manipulation. I just chose to ignore them because I loved Sarah. Sometimes being the bad guy in someone else's story means you're finally being the hero in your own. The experience has taught me that it's better to be alone than to be with someone who doesn't respect your boundaries or truth. I've started focusing on my career and rebuilding the friendships I had neglected during all this drama. While I'm not ready to date again, I know now what to look out for in future relationships.